Hello, this is Michael from Coma Music Magazine, and I'm here tonight with Ben V from Ludovico Technique. Hello.
Hey, how's it going, Michael?
Pretty good. Thank you for coming to see us. Kind of an awkward question to start out, but here goes. There were multiple tattooists giving away free Ludovico Technique logo tattoos. How did that go? Did you have a lot of people getting any feedback? And how do you feel having an LT logo on someone's skin?
Well, actually, the promotion is still going on, yes. We had contacted a bunch of tattoo artists from across the country to see if they would be interested in kind of doing a promo where they would do, a small LT logo for the band. And the response was actually pretty exciting for us because we found a lot of tattoo artists were really into the idea. As far as feedback we've gotten, people who've gotten them, everyone that I've seen so far has been great. I mean, I think there's probably, I don't know a number, but I've seen like upwards to 20 or so, and they're all really quality work. So if you see that promo anywhere in your town or near your city, I would, and you're a fan of Ludovico, I would definitely check it out. As far as seeing the band symbol like tattooed on someone, that's it does actually touch me pretty personally because it's not just some arbitrary thing that was made up. I mean, everything that I put into my music and my art is very deep to me. So when I see someone that's connected with it to the point of wanting to, put it into them, put it into their skin and have it for life, I think that it just makes me feel that the things that I do have reached people in such a deep manner that it means just as much to them in certain ways that it does me, and that's kind of an amazing thing, actually.
Right. You played a shit ton of shows within the past couple years, and maybe more. How do you hold on to the passion in your live performance after doing it so many times?
I think because the material right to begin with is pretty genuine as far as an expression of negative emotions. So there's really not, I can only assume that maybe if you didn't write stuff from your heart, it would get tedious to perform night after night. But when you write from your heart, you're not really going to be. It
doesn't go away.
Yeah, it's like telling someone you love them, or you ever get tired of actually expressing something that's very deep to you. You're not going to get tired of doing it if it originally came from your heart. So.
Your rise to touring with the top acts in the scene was seemingly really quick. How has all of that attention from the big boys made you feel?
Great, because they get to, some of the European bands get to come over and see how we do it in the United States. Some of the other United States acts get to see how Ludovico Technique does it, and I think that touring with bands, you get very close because you're in close proximity on a daily basis for weeks on end, months on end, and I think basically the attention from other acts is really more just a mutual respect as from artist to artist. I meet artists and I see their hard work day in, day out, and it makes me respect them as people, and I could only hope that it goes both ways.
This one is from Amy. She's over there. Shutting Down is one of your slower songs from 2012's Some Things Are Beyond Therapy. As with all of your lyrics, it's deeply emotional and personal. She would like you to speak on the inspiration for that song if you could.
Shutting Down is about, it's actually literally about my father's body dying in the hospital. So the reason that the vocals are vocoded, like that's a certain type of effect, it sounds like a robot, is because I wanted to have a song that, usually vocals are very like emotional in a way that you could hear the person's soul through them. I wanted to flatline my vocals on purpose because by the end of the song, my father's body flatlines. So there is actually a reason. A lot of people have been like, oh, you use a vocoder, you use this effect, you use that effect. Every time I pick an effect for what I'm doing, it's actually like another tool in the arsenal. I think if you just kind of really dig deep on what you're doing with your art, you'll find that there are tools out there that will help you express those things. So as far as the Shutting Down lyrics, I mean, they're, if you read them, it's just basically about a loved one dying, and by the end of it, you know, they're gone. So, yeah.
Great. So you're using the vocoder not just as because it sounds cool. You're using it for a reason.
Right. Exactly. I think most of the time when you express art, when you express your emotions, you probably should do it for a reason, or you should probably stop doing it.
Right. Or just make money. Whatever you're into it for, I guess. Right. As I mentioned before, you've done a lot of touring this year, so I'd imagine you have some great memories. Are there any highlights that you could share with the fans?
I think really it's like every city is different and every tour is different. You know, you tour a lot and then you kind of feel like, I'm used to touring, and every new tour, you never really come back the same. Like, no matter how many times you've done it, you know. So I think that as far as a particular story, I mean, there's some crowds that really get into it, and you could see that it's moving them. And then there's other crowds that, it's weird. We'll play some shows where the crowd is a little bit more reserved, and then after the show's done, they'll all come to the merch booth and be like, "Oh my God," you know. And it's almost like they were like watching like something happening that they didn't know how to respond to at the time, and then after it's over, they're like, "Okay, wait a second, what did I just
process?
Yeah, like what did I just see? Like I thought that was great or something." And then they'll come to the merch booth and tell our merch people like, "Whoa!" But they you know, so it's interesting, you know. And then some people aren't going to like what you do, and that's okay. Not everyone's going to like everything that's out there. So there's certain people that kind of in the industrial scene. I mean, the industrial scene is filled with a lot of people with opinions, right. And I think that's a good thing. I think that unfortunately in the last probably 10 years actually, people's opinionated nature, which has made our scene great, has actually kind of started to turn on itself. And I think that it's very good to be opinionated and maybe be a little more open to expand your opinionated nature to encompass more. And that's, you know, so.
Well, that's what industrial music really is all about at the heart of it.
That's why I got into it. I think anyone who gets into industrial music originally gets into it because it's unlike anything else. But when you bring a mentality that's like everything else that we try to get away from into it, you're not doing our culture any service.
Right. We've kind of talked about this, but what was your reaction when you heard that you were going to be touring with Grendel?
Well, we actually, at this point, we shared the same booking agent, and you know, since we're on the same label and everything, like it just kind of made sense. They were coming over, and you know, a lot of when I heard the news, I was like, when our booking agent called us and was like, "Hey, you know, we're gonna put you on as the opening act," and you know, Grendel is on board with that, and they really, you know, are into whatever. It was pretty. I felt like, okay, cool, you know, like. There's so many weird things that go on behind the scenes and kind of on the back end, politics and all that. And what I have found is that the Europeans, because the scene actually is much larger over there, when they come to the United States, they're very interested in the way that we do things here. And so I think it just made sense that since we kind of are this workhorse of US industrial, that to bring big heavy hitters over from Europe to see the way kind of how you bust your ass. Right. And I think they take away a great amount of appreciation because there's hard work to be an industrial musician in the United States. Right. You know.
Cool. How does your songwriting process work? Fans are curious to know if you sit and write songs like at a desk, or are your songs more of a fragmented, ideas coming to you throughout the day type of process?
I think it's kind of a bit of both. It's like sometimes when I go to write something, much like a author may rent a cabin out in the woods to get away from everything and just rent a place that they've never been to and go to a different city they've never been to and just sit in this like place to let those thoughts out. I find that I write like that. Like if I'm on tour, if there's a lot of like excitement or anything going on, I really try to just take everything in for a later time when I'll sit and kind of collect everything. Other times things will just come to me and I'll just, you know, record them out as they come. But as far as like music or lyrics, I think that the best way to do it is what you feel is right. I mean, you're gonna sing some lines in your head, or you're gonna have a melody in your head, and there's no one around you that's gonna go, "That's great." You have to go to yourself, "You know what? That is great, and I'm going to use that." And there's no little click or chime or anything that goes, "Yeah, that's the one that you should keep." Like, you have to really be kind of discriminate with your own kind of ideas in a way that helps you along with your artistic process. So, I mean, I don't know how other people do it, really. I can only tell you as far as I do it. Writer's block is something I've heard people talk about, and there's all these exercises, but really I think that if you're facing some sort of writer's block, you need to maybe get into a new situation, really. Like, if you're not used to doing something, go do that thing.
Right, it's sort of like the cabin in the woods, and you also post a lot of pictures on Facebook where you'll say inspiration for the day.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, art in general, like whether it be visual art or film or like sculpture. I mean, it kind of, I'll look at a painting and I'll start having musical ideas, or I'll watch a film and I'll start having musical ideas, or it's not just music. Or I'll listen to music that's completely different from industrial, of course. Because if you are musically inclined, you're going to draw inspiration from anywhere, and you're going to almost like filter it through the way you are, and then what comes out is your artistic process.
You founded Beyond Therapy Records in 2011, I believe, to essentially help lesser-known artists that you feel have artistic integrity. How active are you in trying to find those artists, and do you currently have some new prospects?
Yeah, I'd in the beginning of this, or I think it was in the middle of last year, in the middle of 2013, I had signed probably 4 or 5 acts, and I'm eagerly awaiting the output from them to see how things go. I mean, with that, originally before we were on Metropolis Records, we were on a label called Crunchpod Records, and unfortunately Crunchpod Records kind of went out of business, or defunct or whatever. And I kind of thought, well, there needs to be that place where unestablished artists can have a stepping stone to, you step and you get into one realm, and then as the more hungry you are as an artist and the more you do as an artist, they'll be the next place. So a couple of our artists actually have gone on to bigger labels, and that's kind of my whole goal is, I don't want that label to be this huge, giant label. I want it to be the entry level for people who are serious. I have had some people that have gone on to do great things from there, and I've had people that they release something and then maybe they want to do something else in life. And I think either way, it's a good thing. Even if you only release one album in your life and then you want to go, I don't know, herd cattle or something, I don't know what, like some other thing in life, and that's cool too. And I think it's a good thing.
Well, it's cool that you have that. There's only a handful that I could even think of. Juggernaut Services, for one, is sort of, they want to give people a stepping stone, foundation. Right. Let people see them and hear the music. So that's great.
Definitely.
Since you've been touring so much recently, you're probably exhausted. I would imagine you'd like to take a break after this. When can the fans expect to see you again?
Well, as soon as we get home from this, I'm going to be releasing our next album. Because we've had Some Things Beyond Therapy was out, and then the remix album of that, and then it's time for a new album. I mean, I have tons of material at home.
Actually, I saw in an interview you said you after a while of touring and you haven't made any music, you get that feeling that it's time. Is it time?
Yeah, you do. I think, at least me as a person who makes music, you get that feeling like, okay, I have these things that if I don't get out, then it's going to come out in more destructive ways than artistically. And art never hurt anyone, so it's best to put any sort of negative emotions or any sort of negative ideas into a constructive outlet, such as an artistic process like music. I mean, even, I don't know if you're going to ask this, but I mean, I'll just take the time to say it. Even the way we look on stage, I don't know if you have any questions about that, but some people, they kind of really. It's so funny. The industrial scene is such a unique little place. It's like they'll down a band for having stage theatrics or looking a certain way, and they'll say they're not about the music, they're about the image. And what I'll say is, it should be about everything. Because I'll tell you, even as a fan of music, there's nothing that is worse for the industrial scene than going to see a boring live act. And that has killed us in the last 15 years or so, seeing boring live acts. And if I'm the only one that wants to say it, I'll be the only one to say it. We're in industrial. The reason I got into industrial was to be opinionated and have opinions and not be frightened to say them. So I will say them on your show. If you're a boring industrial act, stop, because you're not doing anything for your community, and more than likely people will want more from you. So up your game. Up your game, expression-wise, artistically, as far as when I listen to an album from first track to the last track, I want to know the artist better by the time that last track comes on. And I know things are a little different now. People just listen to like one song and they download stuff, and you don't really have albums the same way we used to have albums. But I want to know more about the artist. That's always what I've wanted, and that's what I want for my art as well. And so,
is that possible anymore?
Of course, because there will always be fans that care enough about your output to listen to the entire thing. There'll be people that are like the Weekend Warrior fans that know one song, and then there'll be like the guy that has your band name carved into his chest with a knife or something. And so as far as what we look like on stage, I mean, I like to think the idea is most of the things I sing about or I write about are kind of like poisonous and venomous thoughts and feelings, things that I don't want inside of me anymore, things that if you harbor that and you walk around every day, you will be bitter and you will be just a negative person. And so when we're on stage and I'm expressing the things that I've written, I like the idea that those negative and all of that is starting to permeate through the skin of everyone performing it. So I'm expressing those negative emotions, and you're starting to see that poison kind of, that's why we all get twisted and kind of, that's not just this cool thing. It's actually not cool at all. What it is almost like those negative emotions surfacing through the pores and kind of twisting the human form while those emotions are being channeled out of them. So
it's not a choreographed dance.
No, actually, not at all. Like, there's never been a Ludovico rehearsal where I tell somebody like, okay, do this thing. I mean, it's actually, I'd say every single one of our performances have always been impromptu, just whatever emotion is being felt at the moment, and I will say that when I get into that place and when I get into that zone, a lot of my stage movements are kind of based off of anxiety attack, muscle spasms and stuff. Like, people will ask me like, oh, you're weird. And I'm like, well, actually, a lot of the stuff I go through in regular life is weird. And if I can channel that enough out through the artistic process, then that means when I get to go home, it's gone until it starts to build back up again. And then I got to do it again. So I guess the day that I'm like cured all right is the day that there's no more Ludovico Technique. So,
well, and it happened with Stabbing Westward, for instance.
Yeah. I mean,
writing love songs instead of...
Exactly. The day that I feel great and the day that I'm just, everything is all good and happy is the day that I stop doing it, because I think it would be better to end Ludovico Technique on that note than try to put out more albums that are forgeries of emotions.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Last question, and it kind of, you've already talked a little bit about it, but have you can bring laptops on, I don't know if you have a laptop, but you can create music on the road these days. Yeah. You don't have to be in a studio. Have you had an opportunity to work on any Ludovico Technique music, and when can the fans expect something new?
Yeah. I usually work on things. I'll write lyrics and I'll like kind of have melodic ideas on the road. But as far as trying to program out something or whatever, I mean, we try to record most of our stuff with hardware anyway. So it would be like writing out some MIDI notes or something. And I think a lot of other artists do actually do that. Like you'll see people touring and they'll have a laptop up and they're like, hey, check out the new this track. And I can't focus like that. Like, either I'm trying to sleep, I'm trying to think about the next show, I'm trying to think about how to make everything just that much more intense or expressive. So my brain just does not process like, hey, I guess that's a way to kind of get away from the fact that you're surrounded by kind of insanity on tour is to focus on that, but I can't, that's something for me to do it's weird. I don't know. I think a lot of people that maybe write poetry or write things or draw, like they like to be alone. I mean, some people don't even like to show people after they're done. Right. But, I kind of actually like to be more alone when I'm writing things. I guess it's the old school goth or something in me,
All right. Yeah, but touring day in, day out, you're on the road most of the day, probably. So, yeah, I could see how that might be a little impossible. All right, is there anything further you'd like to add?
Just keep following your heart. If you're a music lover, find new things that move you, find new things that speak to you, and remember the old things that speak to you, and bring them all together. If you're a writer of music, if you're a musician, don't think too much about what other people are doing. Do exactly what it is you want to do, because that's going to be the future of our culture. Our culture is not dying. I get to hear it from the old fossils of the scene every day, complaining, industrial's dying because this thing happened. It's like, nah, you're just old. So, yeah, there's a lot of exciting things occurring, and you can be one of those exciting things. Just follow your heart. Do not try to be anything that you're not. Just express yourself from the deepest realms of what you are, and don't ask anybody if it's okay. That's why you got into industrial, is to not ask anyone what their opinion is. So just, if you stay on that track, our culture will thrive and continue.
Well said. Can't wait for the show. Go see him. Thanks.